Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lula. Andrew Rogers here with me as well. We are brought to you by our friends at Dyer Law. If you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. Hopefully the people you saw in a car accident this morning don't need Dyer Law, but if they do have a personal injury, go ahead and give our friends at Dyer Law.
They may need Dingmans more than they need Dyer Law.
Hey, call them both. Just call them both.
I called Dingmans over the weekend because I wanted to cash in my oil change.
Oh, yeah?
And I was trying to get in touch with their mechanical shop, and I called the wrong location at first, the collision center, and then I called their mechanical shop. And, oddly enough, like I called, and it just kept ringing. So I don't know if I had the right phone number or if I need to revisit that, but I think I'm just going to bring my car over there. I'm just going to go.
I'm sure they'll take care of you.
Because I was going to call and be like, hey, how long's like the wait? They're probably swamped, super busy, or maybe they're not even open on Sundays.
We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by our friend Sam Mckewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
We are doing well. Let's just start off with, some pretty staggering numbers here that I think everybody's probably heard by now. But first 3-game win streak since 2016. First time going undefeated in October since, I think, 2001. Put those numbers into perspective for me, Sam.
Well, it's a combination of the teams they're playing, and Nebraska's gotten really good on defense in a short amount of time. And, you tip your cap to that reality and to, making plays off script. You don't go into a game expecting to get a blocked field goal for a touchdown. But when you get plays like that, you usually win. Special teams touchdowns are often unforeseen, and they usually lead to victories. And so, those are always things to kind of watch. And Nebraska got a big play, and they got it at the right time in the game. If that fumble return to Purdue happens in the first quarter, maybe it's a different story. But the reality is Nebraska, controlled the first 3 quarters of that game in a lot of different ways. And they got a big play when they needed it with the throw to Lloyd, and they had a nice drive, the 87-yard drive, and they dominated Purdue for 3 quarters. And then, at the end, it got a little loose, but they survived it. And here we are on the cusp of a bowl game. That's where we find ourselves now.
Perfect transition, Sam. How crazy yet real does it feel to be in striking distance of a bowl game?
Oh, yeah. I think if you'd kind of cast your gaze before the season, I could have imagined Nebraska being 5-3 at this point. I would not have imagined them losing to Colorado, and I would not have imagined them beating Illinois. But they those 2 things flip-flopped, and then I thought Northwestern wasn't going to be very good. I thought Purdue was going to be a team that Nebraska beat. Thought Purdue was going to take a step back, and they did. So I'm not stunned that they're 5-3 at this point. I think now it becomes a question of, can you go out and close it? Can you go and get that last win? Can you? That certainly can be this week. Believe me, nobody's going to stop them. Michigan State's on the ropes, and their season is not over, but it's it's over. And Michigan State's going to probably end up being a 9-loss team. So Nebraska's got a real chance here to put them away and clinch it. And you go play Maryland, who's on the ropes like they usually are at this time of year. So, everything's in play at this point. Everything's in place for what Nebraska wants and needs, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I think it's going to be interesting.
Sam, you mentioned kind of the schedule and some of the teams they faced and that type of thing, and I understand this is not a murderer's row of opponents that they're facing here, but I'm genuinely curious how much difference is there between the Big Ten West this year and some of the teams that Nebraska's faced versus in years past? Because it's not like the Big Ten West has been lighting the world on fire for a little while now. I guess, how much of a gap is there in terms of the opponents that Nebraska's played compared to years past?
There's probably not much of a gap from last year.
Right. Yeah.
I think, not much of a gap from last season. There's been other years where the Big Ten West has been, 2019, the Big Ten West was pretty good.
Sure.
Minnesota won 11. Wisconsin went to the Rose Bowl, I think, and lost, but lost to a good team when they got there. Iowa was good. I think Iowa had 9 wins. 2021 was pretty good when you think about it. Purdue was a good 9-win team, and Minnesota was a good 9-win team. I think Iowa won 10. So there's been years where the division's been tougher than it is right now, for sure. And some of what's happening right now is that the defenses are all pretty old and pretty stingy, and the offenses, a lot of the players, and this is a byproduct of the transfer portal, a lot of the best skilled player recruits at a number of these programs have transferred. At Iowa, they transferred. At Minnesota, Bucky Irving, who's probably going to be the Pac-12, all Pac-12 running back, transferred. At Wisconsin, a couple guys have transferred. At Nebraska, let's be honest, a couple of good players have transferred. It's not a crime that they did, but A.J. Allen probably would have helped this team.
Mm-hmm.
I know Nebraska didn't like his hands out of the backfield, but look at what they're putting out there right now in terms of ball security. So, there's been some players who have transferred that probably would have helped this team, or guys that didn't sign or whatever. And so, a lot of the defenses have gotten old. A lot of the players have transferred, or they've left early. Good players leave early for the NFL. I don't think Sam Laporta had exhausted his eligibility, so stuff like that. And so I think, this is where the league's at right now. That's going to change come next year. And you're really going to start to see the sea change in about 25 or 26 when all the COVID years are done, and it's no longer 6-year defensive linemen who are going to go get an MBA or are getting an MBA and going to go back and be a businessman, who are just playing. They're just like the 25-year-old men, and they're playing college football. They'll just be 24, But so there's going to be some turnover eventually in college football, where you don't have 6-year players all over the place on the defensive side of the ball, and that's where the majority of them have been. Is guys that are safeties and linebackers. They're probably not NFL players, but they're going to hang on in college football because they're making 6 figures in NIL, and that's part of what you've seen happen.
Sam, I may be sounding a little adventurous when I say this, but based on how the Big Ten West looks, I still think it's a definite possibility. Is this Nebraska defense enough to get to the Huskers, to the Big Ten championship game, if the offense stays exactly where they're at?
In theory, yes, it is. There's probably one game in there where you just kind of wonder whether that's going to be enough, and that's probably the game at Wisconsin. But Wisconsin's got their own warts now, with Braylon Allen being hurt, DK being hurt up there too, their receiver. So I think there's in theory it can happen. It's very possible. If I told you that Iowa could get to the Big Ten championship game with its offense, everybody would agree. And their offense is horrible. So, I have to watch more of this quarterback. That I don't know I don't know why he's there. I don't know. I'll have to watch more of him. Apparently he has a good arm, and I don't know what number of quarterback he is on the team. I know they had a guy get hurt, and obviously not McNamara, but they had another backup get hurt, and so I'm not exactly sure why this is the guy that's playing. But you talk about limited. He's limited, and so
definitely
there's not. I'm not sure he can get out of the pocket. So there's a lot of things that are true of Iowa. Nobody blink an eye if Iowa goes 10-2 and is in the Big Ten championship. So Nebraska can do it. I think Nebraska's got a good enough defense to pull it off. I think their offense is more dynamic, to be really honest with you, than Iowa's offense. And so, it's possible. I think I don't know that I'd bet on it. I think this, to me, this looks like 7 wins. 9 feels like a stretch to me. But 7.
Hey, both cases are great.
It'd be great. It looks like 7 at this moment, and 7 gets you to Las Vegas probably. So 9, if you go to the Big Ten championship game and you win 9 games, and again, Nebraska does not control its destiny completely. They need Minnesota to lose to Ohio State the week before the Iowa game. So Minnesota wins out, and Minnesota wins the Big Ten West. But if Nebraska gets to 9 wins, they're going to play on New Year's Day, which is just bizarre. But that'll happen. That will happen. They'll get to play in the Citrus Bowl or the Outback Bowl or whatever they call that bowl now. And, they'll play in Tampa or Orlando, and nobody would have anticipated that before the year began. Certainly nobody.
We're talking with Sam Mckewon of the Omaha World Herald. Sam, as you look at the rest of the schedule, I know we're kind of talking like projecting wins and stuff here, which is always, probably a fool's errand, but we like to do it anyway. That's kind of the job. But as you look at this schedule on the way out, you were kind of talking about some of the issues that each team has. Obviously, Michigan State, the quote-unquote easiest of the final 4 opponents. But as you look on the last 4 games, I mean, who do you think is the toughest? Because obviously Iowa's got the defense, but the offense is, as we mentioned, just flat out atrocious. Wisconsin and Maryland, I always thought were probably the toughest ones, but they're each having their own issues as well. I'm curious, who do you see as the toughest opponent left?
Probably Wisconsin. I don't think they're necessarily the most complete team, but probably them. I think that the game is up there and it's at night, and I think it's their senior day, right? And I don't know, the fans will be juiced up, and so I think that's probably the one that stands out to me as challenging for Nebraska.
Does that seem less daunting than it did to you even a few weeks ago, though?
Yeah, it does, because you don't have your quarterback,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have your running back, and you don't have your best receiver. So yeah, it does seem less daunting for sure. Nebraska also doesn't have some of those players. But,
sure.
But let me say this: the gap between the best quarterback, running back, and receiver at Wisconsin and the next best is larger than the gap at Nebraska. I mean, let's be honest. And I think Harburg's better at this point than Sims. I feel for Sims for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a hard go, but I'd roll with Harburg despite his mistakes. Nebraska's number 1 running back, I guess, was Gabe Ervin. I don't know. He's not as good as Braylon Allen. And then Wisconsin's number 2 running back is out too.
Mm-hmm.
Malusi is done for the year. And then I don't know who Nebraska's number 1 receiver was, but it is what it is. So I think Nebraska's gap, they didn't lose as much there. Now, we'll see with these offensive line changes what it looks like. I'm not saying that Nebraska wouldn't be a better offense if they had all those players healthy. Obviously, they would be, and they would probably, be more effective offense in some ways. But those players aren't available. And to be honest with you, Nebraska's kind of a big play offense, guys. So part of what they do is they're scheming it up. And Jalen Lloyd can run wide open through a defense just as well as Billy Kemp can. So it's
maybe better.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, some of the stuff they're doing is not predicated on who's doing it. It's not Trey Palmer out there. It's just whoever happens to be the play, and they're going to call the play, and they're going to try to scheme it up a little bit. And so they've done that, and I think that will continue. They're going to get Heinrich Harburg open throws. I think Marcus Satterfield has done that.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten Harburg opportunities. Harburg's got to make the best of those, and he hit one. This is the second time in a row this week where they roll him to the right off a play action fake. Got a 20-yard throw that should be a first down. He doesn't hit it. He's got to find a way to learn how to hit that throw because it's there both times. And they'll get there. They'll get there with him. He's still growing as a player, and they'll find a way to make it work for him.
Sam, Nebraska has been much stronger in the turnovers loss column since the first 2 games of the year, but it's still a problem, one that needs fixing. But my question to you is, can that be coached, or is that something the player just has to work out on his own?
I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second. What can be coached?
Can the turnovers be coached? Like the turnovers lost, can that be coached, or is that something the player just has to figure out on his own?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of things that are going on there. I think with the ball security piece, I know they're coaching it, so sometimes that stuff can be almost contagious, where you're thinking about it and don't do it. Some of the option stuff, the option is inherently risky and turnover prone.
Mm-hmm.
It is, because you have a ball handler out on the edge in free space. He's not considered an undefensive player who's handling the ball, pitching it, running it, all those things. And the quarterback's running perpendicular to the line of scrimmage, and so if he gets hit the way that Harburg did on that one, you're going to lose the ball. Like, that's what happens when your shoulders aren't square and you're not running at a guy, but you're running down the line. That's why it's an art. The really good ones, going back all the way, whoever that was, Jamel Holloway, Darian Hagan, Tommy Frazier was as good as I've ever seen. It's an art to not get hurt and to know when to pitch the ball. So that takes a lot of time and effort. It takes just as much time and effort as anything. And that he's getting better there. I think Rule mentioned it in the presser about the punt return. They need to have a punt return competition this week for sure. I don't pretend to know how you prevent a ball from bouncing off your chest the way that happened with Bullock, and that was too bad. But what happened on the subsequent punt returns was that can't happen. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't have balls bouncing and then it was hitting in front of you by 10 yards because you're afraid to go field the ball, and then having it bounce 25 yards. That's not. I mean, that's what Samari Toure did back in Michigan State 2 years ago, and it lost him the game. Like, he had either the ball was going way over his head because he didn't know where to stand, or he didn't know how to field a punt. And I was like, this is you have to have somebody back there who knows how to field punts and can get under the ball. And maybe they were asking Bullock to do that. I don't know, but if that's what they were asking him to do, then they need to have a competition this week to figure out who can go and get the ball. And Billy Kemp was good at that. One of the best skills he had is that he knew how to go and get the ball. And maybe Tommy Hill, he caught that one.
Right.
That one punt. And of course, they didn't throw a flag. They should have thrown a flag on the Purdue defender, who was all over him when he caught it.
Mm-hmm. I'm
like, this is what I mean. It does, just because it's a bad punt doesn't mean that he doesn't get a chance to field the punt. So there were moments in that game that were just like, this is not good football at all.
Sam, could you make the argument that Nebraska's having more of those, we'll call them for radio purposes, oh crap plays than they even have been in years past, but for obvious reasons, they're coming out with victories instead of losses? Because I think, for me, I'm not sure that we've realized, like, hey, a lot of the same mistakes are happening. They're just finding the same ways to win, and maybe even more mistakes are happening.
Yeah, it's the defense. The defense is playing great. And so that's the biggest part, is that defense is flying around and they're hitting people and they don't flinch. And they play an aggressive style that probably doesn't let them think a lot. And they just got to go play. And they are. They are. They're playing really hard. And they hit. They're starting to create turnovers. They've got good athletes on that side of the ball. Most of them are healthy. And all the things that we knew were true of the culture on that side of the ball are just coming to fruition. Offense is always going to be more temperamental because execution is hard. Like, it's hard, and you can't just, on offense you can win with effort for sure, but it can't just be all effort. There's a certain craft and art to doing certain things. You can't throw every pass as hard as you possibly can. A running back has to have patience, whereas a safety who's just going up to fill a play won't have any patience. So there's things on the offensive side of the ball that take time. But in defense, you can get a long way with effort and toughness and aggression. They're playing their guts out, and I think that's why they're winning these games, and they'll have a great chance to beat Michigan State. I think I'm going to ask Rule probably today, why are the defenses so far ahead of the offenses in this league, and how does that compare to the Big 12? Because he knows that league too. So there's something going on there, and it's playing itself out in pretty much every game on the Big 10 schedule.
Sam, quickly here, got about a minute and a half. I was just scrolling through Twitter and I saw a question that popped up. Who deserves to win Coach of the Year? And Drink from Mizzou is on here, and Leipold is the other one from KU. But if Nebraska gets all the way to that New Year's game that we were kind of alluding to at the beginning, could Matt Rule be in discussion for Coach of the Year?
I don't think so. I think, I think they'll probably fall short of that. I know Tom Allen won it in 2020 for going 6-2 and the COVID year, but no, I think he could win Big Ten Coach of the Year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a chance there. I think he'll probably fall short of the other honor, maybe just by a little bit. Certainly Lance Leipold has a chance, and Drinkwitz does too. So we'll see. We'll see how that all shakes out. Be hard to say. Maybe Kalen DeBoer was the Coach of the Year last year, but if Washington goes undefeated, I think Kalen DeBoer is your guy. I think that'd be a great choice. He's done a heck of a job up there in the short time he's been there. Right now, I would say Matt Rule has a terrific chance of being Big Ten Coach of the Year. Don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to get it. If Nebraska gets to 8 or 9 wins, I think he's got a real shot of grabbing the honor.
Sam Mckewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
That's Sam Mckewon from the Omaha World Herald. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities.